Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Asdrúbal Pichardo, CEO at Squalify. Asdrúbal, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you, man?
I'm doing great and very happy, and thanks for inviting me to your podcast
Sure.
series.
Of course, Asdrúbal, we know each other for a while. With your previous company, you participated at Bold Awards, and truly looking for this conversation. And it's our first conversation, so I'll try to first go with your journey. What inspired you to build and grow businesses across industries and geographies, and how that journey led to founding the latest, which is Squalify.
Sure. I'm a technologist, and I've had the opportunity to work in different companies, but particularly after having spent a long time at a big corporate, SAP, which is the largest software company in Europe. I started to help and join smaller companies to help them to expand, to establish themselves, not only startups, but also smaller software companies. And that was driven by my passion to build new things and to grow businesses. So really taking something which is very small and then seeing it grow. So that was kind of the engine inside me. And also parallel to that, I've always been very attracted to challenges. So I get bored when things get too easy. So really having the opportunity to work in really hot topics, hot technology topics, as we will probably touch base later. So Internet of Things, like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. And that was also like a motor, an engine pushing me to find the next challenge, but also trying to see how can I help and and have my impact in the business and in the world economy.
So, what does Qualified? What does it do today?
Yeah, so Squalify is a corporate venture, a corporate startup. We have been now 2 years in the market officially. And we are providing a solution to help companies to quantify the cyber risk. So quantify means really putting a financial figure behind the potential losses. So really, let's say the CIO being able to go to the board or the CEO or the CFO to say, hey, if we experience a cyber attack, we might lose 10 million or 500 million. And if you know how much money is at stake, how much money you might lose, then you can make sure you prioritize and make sure you are making the right investments and putting your money in the right bucket in order to manage that risk. The risk won't go away. There's always going to be a cyber risk based on what you're doing in the markets, how big you are, which region you operate in, which regulation is affecting you. But typically, companies don't know how much money they know there's a risk. They do some qualitative assessment saying risk is high, risk is medium, but what does it mean high? It's just 50 million or 500 million. And this is really what we do. So really bring a full clarity and then helping companies to prioritize their cybersecurity investments. And this
So,
is being offered as a product, as a software.
yeah, so making their life easier and to come up to the decision making faster without trying to put too much effort, or because sometimes they don't even know, right? And so it's they may think like, oh, it's okay, but then if you understand like the consequence of not doing it, right? It's
Correct. Yeah. So not knowing, either not knowing, but also not waiting before it's too late. I mean,
yeah,
some
which is
companies, yeah.
just that's what happens most of the time, right?
Most of the time, they start running and going crazy when things happen, and then it's too late. Of course, they learn the lessons, but much better to be prepared before something bad happens. And it's a matter of time before it happens.
Yeah. Now, how did the opportunity came about with Squalify, and what made you believe that cyber risk quantification was the right problem?
Right. Yeah. So Squalify, I mentioned, is a corporate venture. That means we are fully funded by a big corporation. In our case, is Munich Re or Munich RE. Munich Re is the largest reinsurer of the world. So it's a pretty big company, more than 100 years of history. And the idea of Squalify started as an innovation project within Munich Re. And at some point, it became so interesting where they say, okay, this is relevant. I mean, we have a wealth of data that they have captured in the last 10 years from the cyber insurance space. And if you have the history and the data of what have been the costs of actual cyber incidents, then you can quantify, you can come close to a good number. So this had been the premise, and became very interested. And then they said, well, we need to spin this off from the corporate, because this is interesting beyond insurance. This is interesting for companies in all industries: finance, manufacturing, energy, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, retail, you name it. So that was also the trigger to communicate. So we need to spawn this off and make it a separate entity. And that's when they went out and looked for a CEO like myself, who has experience building companies, building a SaaS business, software as a service, because that's not the core business. In Munich, they don't focus in software, and that's why they went outside and engaged an executive recruiter to find the CEO, and here I am now, 2 years there.
Nice. Uh, so being backed by Munich Re gives Qualify a unique advantage point. How has that access to global insurance data shaped the platform's precision and credibility?
It's actually a unique value proposition, and how I like to call it is our secret sauce. So in my sales presentation, sales pitches, this is our core value. Nobody has this. And what does it mean? So really, Munich Re started very bold, very visionary. It started more than 10 years and got into the cyber insurance area, where other big insurers and reinsurers, they say, no, it's very tricky. We don't know. It's very tricky to insure something you don't know. But Munich Re was bold enough and said, well, if we don't do this now, we want to stay relevant, right, for the future. And they started doing it, and they have been pretty good at it. And you can imagine, so more than 10 years, and as a reinsurer, it's not necessarily very exciting to know how much money companies are paying for cyber insurance policies. It's even more interesting to know what had been the cost of actual cyber incidents. So we have access, and we are the only ones with that as a 100% funded company by Munich Re, to costs from more than 100,000 companies that have experienced a cyber incident. And every time there's a cyber incident that is insured, the costs have to be determined. So how much money was lost because of extortion or ransomware, how much money, legal fees, data recovery costs, and so on. And there have been more than 100,000 cases, and it's also smaller claims, more than 1 million that we have in the database, but also many thousand, more than 10,000 large losses. Large losses is in the order of a couple of millions. And this is really global. So we are talking about data from companies across more than 80 countries, across more than 130 industries. So that's really what gives us a unique positioning, and coming to pretty reliable and figures. I mean, it's not perfect, but it comes close to the reality. Um,
And
yeah.
are you moving these executives from making decision like making like a fear-based decision to more like a data-driven strategic investment?
For sure, yeah. So this is really what our customers and people really appreciate. So this is not a speculation. This is not assuming the wrong things. This is really about making the realization based on data-backed figures. And of course, there are some experts also interpretation. The model is also fed by experts that are constantly monitoring the market and the cyber threat landscape, but it's mostly data-backed because of these 10 years of history. And because before Squalify, I mean, there have been other solutions out there trying to quantify risk, but these solutions, they had to make a lot of assumptions and they typically focus on things they know. So known risk, but imagine, I mean, companies similar to yours, same size or same industry, they have experienced cyber attacks. So in our model, that's another advantage. Like an insurer also need to cover and consider the unknown. So this unknown factor is also embedded in the model, and this also gives more confidence and credibility to what we are providing as output from the solution.
Yeah. Um, so let's talk about then your decision making. So were you faced with a tough call, or where data alone is not enough? What do you rely on most to guide your decision?
Well, I mean, I've been doing sales now for a while, especially if you're a CEO of a startup. You are an ace of different trades, right? You need to get your hands dirty, and so that's also one of the things that motivate me and being very hands-on and being involved in different aspects of the business. And for a SaaS startup, the CEO typically focus a lot on sales at the beginning, of course, and the product itself. So sales is not exact science. There's also a lot of things that need to be in place. There's not a clear script, right, to close a deal. And sometimes it's even emotional and the chemistry between the seller and the buyer. But so I'm telling you all this because, of course, if you cannot convince about, okay, we have the best data, it's good data, it's a lot of history, then you need to see the what is the pain of the person in front of you. So I've learned as part of the solution selling methodology is really instead of going there with a script or a standard pitch, you really need to listen, listen the customer or the prospect, and at least help the person to identify the pain, right? So sometimes the customer doesn't know there's a pain or they're in denial. So one of the things I always try to do is let's make sure that the pain is understood, and then if the pain is understood, or at least the customer to be is accepting there's a pain, then you can work around that and see how you can help to solve that pain. And maybe the customer is not concerned about the accuracy of the data, but they will be concerned and open to use the other aspects of the solution, which is being able to simulate and play with different scenarios that helps you where I do get the most impact from my money to reduce my cyber risk. So it's more about the strategic planning of your budgets and giving enough um, information to the CISO to go to the board and get approval for budgets. Yeah. So there are different aspects of the solution, and depending on who's in front of you, you play with those and try to convince them around the functionality of benchmarking. So benchmarking you against your peers or the industry average. The board loves that. So are we doing better or worse than the competition? This is another feature of the solution.
Yeah. Now, when you think back over your career, what was one deal or decision that taught you an unexpected leadership lesson?
Well, I've learned a lot, and every day you keep learning. You never stop learning. Yeah, but I've learned from mistakes. I've learned from situations where you probably became or myself became too complacent. and made the wrong assumptions. And so the lesson learned, don't make too soon the wrong assumptions, and make sure you are doing your homework and preparing and considering also the unexpected, and yeah, don't assume the wrong thing. Don't assume too much. Try to cover different scenarios, because until the ink is not on the paper, no, you have no deal.
Yeah, I learned.
90% is it's not 100%.
Yeah, I learned this from one of the guys. He said, if you want to eliminate assumption in your life, just remove "I think" from your vocabulary.
Yeah, yeah,
Because when you start saying "I think we should do this way because of this," you're adding some kind of assumption that God knows where that came from, and so being very direct in terms of, and this is what it requires you to step out from situations and look at from the other side. Not just like what would you do, but what's the consequences of if you do that, and
right,
and and understand it better before you come to that situation. So assumptions are a killer reality. Let's put it this way.
right. And the a bit related to that, just to another thing that came to my mind is be bold. Taking your line, bold. Be bold to ask the right questions. I mean, sometimes the salespeople they fear to ask a question that might push the client to say no. But you need to know. It's better knowing than not knowing. So be bold to ask the right questions so you know where you're standing. If you don't know where you're standing, you are blind. You don't have line of sight uh, towards the end of getting a deal or not.
Yeah, very well said. Actually, it's so true because it's the quality of questions will determine the quality of the outcome. Uh, Now, when you're asking also those hard questions to someone, you also have an opportunity to build a better trust.
Correct.
The unfortunate part about salespeople is that they're not able to do that because a lot of them they don't know how to get in that location, asking that question. And second is they don't have the confidence because they don't have their pipeline is not full.
Yeah, they are afraid.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but again, like assuming it's a true killer to reality, and better you come up with the right question to get that unspoken, because the unspoken is where things are actually, and that's what that will get you to a better journey. Now, what is the word bold mean to you, Asdrúbal?
Well, I think I like the word bold because in life, not only in private life, but in your job, you need to have the courage to make certain moves, to make certain decisions. And if you don't have the courage, if you're not being bold, you will get stuck. You won't progress. You won't continue. So for me, in my whole career, has always been trying to think big. Of course, think big. Have a strong ambition, which implies being bold. So not being complacent, not being totally happy with what you have today, but seeing what's next. So and that's also require
Getting
boldness and
getting
daring.
daring and getting uncomfortable.
Exactly.
This is what's needed. Azrael, thank you for joining this Bold Talk series. It was always great to connect with you, and I'm glad that we had this short conversation. Until next time, be great and be bold always.
Thanks, Epi. Has been a great pleasure.
Take
Take
care.
care.